Round one of this year's Rugby Championship is done and won, and in this series of videos I'm going to look at each of the teams and give you my analysis on what I think they did well and where they could probably improve for round two coming up this weekend. In this video I'm going to focus on South Africa, so let's get into it right now. G'day everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan who's living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Now I thought I'd make a series of videos after round one of this year's Rugby Championship and just talk about some of the things that I noticed from each of the teams. In this video I'm going to focus on South Africa. So if you're a South African fan, you might want to listen to what I've got to say and then reply accordingly. And I've got to thank you all for all your great comments after the round of rugby in the weekend. Got some great knowledge from all of you out there, and that's exactly what I want from this YouTube channel. So thank you very much for keeping those comments coming. Now let's talk about South Africa. They were going into this game against Australia with a point to prove, I think, after that loss to Ireland. Even though they got over the top of Portugal, I think they wanted to come to Australia and put a couple of things to bed. First of all, they wanted to get out a couple of really good performances on the field. And secondly, get that little bit of a voodoo off their back about being beaten in Australia. First up, I think Rassie got the selection right for the Springboks in this particular game. I like the fact that we saw Lowe coming in at number 8. And I like the fact that we saw Quagga Smith going on to the bench to make a difference, to come on with the bomb squad in the second half. Sasha Feinberg Mongozulu coming in at number 10 was also really exciting. I was looking forward to see how he was going to play. And boy, what another great game he had for the Springboks. So if I look at the game in general, I would say that I thought the Springboks played really well in this game. We saw Tony Brown's influence again coming across in the Springboks team, and if the Springboks weren't already difficult enough to beat, I think having Tony Brown in this coaching squad is really giving them another edge that they can go to, and I'm starting to see the progression of what Tony Brown in particular is bringing to the Springboks team, which is very exciting to watch. Now I saw some standout players throughout the game, so I thought I just might mention those in the video, talk a little bit about them, the overall South African strategy and how that went down, and what they probably need to do next weekend in Perth when they come up against Australia again. So I just want to talk about some of the players that stood out for me for South Africa in this game, and let's start off in the forwards. And I thought Oxen Chair had a fantastic game in this particular game. He was really good up front in the front row, but he was also popping up around the ground in general play, and I thought he had one of the better games that I've seen him play for quite a long time. And then moving on to the locks, and I thought that Peter Steph du Toit and Eben Etzebeth had a fantastic game until Etzebeth was subbed off. Peter Steph du Toit, look, I don't think I've ever seen the guy have a bad game of rugby. He's just absolutely monumental. It doesn't matter whether you put him in there as a loosey or part of the tight five, he can deliver on the game. And if you watch some of his line-out takes, they were absolutely spectacular in just securing that ball for the Springboks. So I thought Peter Steph du Toit had a brilliant game. But getting back to Etzebeth, I thought he was really up for this. You could tell there was a lot of motivation in the way that he was playing. He put in a very hard 60-odd minutes in this game and did very good. In fact, I think it's the best I've seen Etzebeth play in the green jersey for quite a while. Actually, he had an outstanding game. I thought Lowe did very well at number 8. A couple of things that he could have improved in terms of the breakdowns and give South Africa a little bit faster ball on a couple of occasions, but I think that he's had that run now. I think he's going to be a lot better for it, and I think we're going to see a better performance from Lowe if he's picked in that number 8 jersey, which I suspect he will be for the game against Australia in Perth coming up this weekend. Then moving into the backs, I've got to say I'm not a big fan of Cobus Reinhardt. I've been watching him now for a few years. He kind of falls into one of those halfback categories that sometimes doesn't get the box kicking right, not that fast from the distribution platform, and I think the modern halfback these days has to be very quick from the base of the ruck and the scrums, get the ball out very quickly, because a lot of these teams now are deploying rush defences, and I think if you've got a slow halfback, it already puts your backline under a lot of pressure, and I've been talking about that a lot with Finlay Christie and the All Blacks, and Razor Robertson has done the right thing, I think, by dropping him. So Reinhardt kind of fits into that equation for me as well on the South African side. You can notice the difference when Faf de Klerk's in there versus when Reinhardt's in there. and his accuracy around his box kicking, I think, leaves a little bit to be desired as well. But look, when your team's winning, as the South Africans are, it's hard to place too much criticism on them, and I was quite surprised with a lot of you actually in the comments talking about how you expected South Africa to win by a lot more points. I think you're a little bit tough on your team sometimes, because I think they did play really, really well. Plus also give Australia a little bit of credit. They put a really hard 20 minutes in the beginning of that game. They were very physical, more physical than I've seen Australia for quite some time, and obviously Joe Schmidt had got them up for this game to get in there and compete. Yeah, sure, they didn't continue it for 80 minutes, but you've got to sometimes give the opposition some credit when they put in the hard yards, and I think that's what Australia did in the first 20 minutes of that game. For the rest of it, I think execution on the South Africans' part was pretty good. There was a couple of things where they could have gone in for extra points for sure, but again, if you look at their individual players, I think they did an outstanding job. I just really love what Sasha Feinberg-Mongumazula is bringing to the South African backline. It's a little bit what I had expected from Manie Libbok, but Sasha's just delivering, isn't it? He's very good with his kicks. He's got a lot of distance in his kicks as well, and if you take a note of that, you'll see how much ground and territory he's actually getting for South Africa when he puts in a good kick. But it's his ignition from takeoff when he really decides to run the ball. He's very elusive and he can catch the defence off guard. And a couple of times in that game, he was offloading the ball really well, putting players into gaps, and that's exactly what you need from your number 10. So he's really outstanding, doing a great job. And then I thought Damien Deolandi and Jesse Kriel played really well in this game. We saw Damien Deolandi getting involved and taking the ball up over the gain line, but we saw Jesse Kriel making a couple of great breaks, and that's what I remember of Jesse Kriel. We haven't seen a lot of it lately, but he really showed it against this Wallabies team, and that was outstanding play. And then the back three for South Africa, I thought Kurt-Lee Arendse had a really good game. Again, that guy's so dangerous. Every time he gets the ball, he looks like he's going to score a try. And if you put him through a gap, well, he's odds on to score the try, isn't he? Cheslin Kolbe, he's such good at game management. He knows how to read a game. He finds himself in parts of the field doing things that South Africa want to do to really ignite themselves, whether it's throwing the ball into a line out on an occasion, or even if it's feeding a scrum. This is the sort of thing that Cheslin Kolbe has in his game management, and I think that makes him so much a world-class winger. And then Willie Leroux knows how to read the game at fullback. Thought he had a pretty good game. I'd give him about 7 out of 10. Thought he was a little bit selfish on a couple of occasions, but other than that, I thought he had a really good game. So those are some of the players that stood out for me, some of the comments I want to make around the players from South Africa. Let me know in the comments if there's anyone I missed that you thought had an outstanding game. I didn't think the bomb squad was that fantastic in this particular game, and the reason for that is that South Africa only won the second half by 12 points to 7. Okay, they'd done the damage in the first half, no doubt about it, got the bonus point, but I didn't really see the impact of the bomb squad in some of the ways that we have in the other games, and I just make a note of that. And one of the things that I want to make a comment on is R.G. Schneemann. He wasn't in this team this weekend, and I think the South Africans really miss him, because when he comes on as part of the bomb squad, he adds that extra dimension, both physically but also with his ability to be able to offload the ball and the rest of it. He's a really key player in the South African squad, and I think they were missing him a little bit in terms of his impact. I know he was planned to start the game for the Springboks in this particular game, but when he also does come on for the bomb squad, he just adds that little bit extra in terms of his physicality and his ability to be able to offload the ball. So that's another observation that I made about the Springboks this weekend. But overall, I thought it was a superb performance. I think that was one of the better displays I've seen from the Springboks for quite some time. They had to work their way into that game. The Wallabies, again, I said, started off with a lot of intensity. They showed a lot of physicality. They weren't accurate. Australia, they had a poor kicking game. But after that, South Africa really built themselves into the game. Okay, so what do the Springboks need to do in Perth to make sure that they get 2 out of 2 in their visit to Australia? Look, I don't think a lot needs to change. We've got to recognise and accept that these two teams are in different stages of their evolution. South Africa, on one hand, are taking a team that's very, very good already, the best in the world in terms of winning World Cups anyway, and they're looking for now new innovations and evolutions of that team. And I think because there's such a strong platform there, they're able to deliver that. And as I said, those are impacts that Tony Brown is starting to have. is really noticeable within the team. And then on the Australian side, you can see that they're in a rebuilding phase, and Joe Schmidt's got a lot of work to do, but he's got a good bunch of players there, and I think they can get through this together, Australia. I don't think it's going to be a very successful rugby championship for them, but it is from the point of view of bringing this team together as a unit, having some losses together, which is going to give them that unity that they need to have, but then start building on some of the philosophies of Joe Schmidt. So given that the two teams are in very different elements or different phases of their evolution, I think we're going to see a similar scenario in Perth when we get over there in the weekend. We're going to see South Africa being dominant again. They've got a lot of confidence from this game, and I think we're going to see them really take it to the Wallabies in an expansive game as well. It's going to be interesting to see whether Rassie does decide to change the team around a little bit. He might bring Handré Pollard in one of the positions. I'm not too sure yet when that might happen, but the way that Sasha's playing, how can you leave him out of this team? Once the teams are announced later on this week, I will do a preview video for the game in Perth, so make sure you watch out for that. And the best way to stick around with Inside Rugby with Mark is to hit the subscribe button. And if you're also enjoying this video, why not give it a thumbs up as well, and give it a bit of love. I would really appreciate that. So from a South African point of view, I would like to see them continue what they're doing. Don't be scared to play that expansive game. Use your forwards in the first 20 minutes to get some resemblance of dominance, and I think that's what they have against this Australian pack. And then from there, let's see what they can do. I'd like to see Grant Williams start this game for the Springboks and just see whether he can bring that speed and agility from that halfback position that Cobus Reinhardt, for me, is not bringing to the South African team. Because I think with Grant Williams in there from the start, him and Sasha working together, I think that could be really, really dangerous for the Springboks. For the rest of it, I wouldn't make any changes. I think this is a fantastic team. Give them a couple of games together, because we're building into that series against the All Blacks over there in South Africa. And I'm sure Rassie is going to want to see some combinations that are working, particularly from a defensive pattern. And I think South Africa need to work on that a little bit in this game, even though Australia got in for only one try. But also the other thing that's going to be big in this game is going to be their discipline. And I'm sure that Rassie's going to want to see them get through this game without any cards at all, and that's going to be a big play for South Africa. So a lot of focus, I think, needs to go on that. Their discipline was disappointing against Australia in that second half, in particular when they got 3 yellow cards, and that's something they need to eradicate from their game. So if I was being really picky in the weekend, I would say their discipline let them down. Also their defence letting Australia in for that try at the death knell. And I think they should have kept Australia to 0 in that particular game. And yeah, they probably could have put some more points on the board. But again, I would give credit to Australia for doing some of the things they did well throughout that game, even though they didn't do it for anywhere near long enough to be any real competition for the Springboks. So there you go. There's my wrap on what I thought of the Springboks this week against Australia. Let me know in the comments, were there any other players that stood out for you? I'd really look forward to reading those. Now I'm going to be back with some more videos talking about the other teams, so make sure you check out those and let me know what you think as well. Until then, stay safe, stay well, keep enjoying your rugby no matter where you are in the world, and get ready for another fantastic weekend coming up of the Rugby Championship, this time from Perth and from Auckland, Eden Park in New Zealand. Until next time, it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now.